It was just another late-night shift for Jamal. The streets of his neighborhood felt eerily quiet, the usual sounds of life muffled by the cold rain that pounded against the pavement. As he walked home, his worn sneakers splashing through puddles, his mind drifted back to the endless bills and the responsibility of being the man of the house, even though he was only 17. His mom had worked 2 jobs to make sure he and his younger sister could have everything they needed, and Jamal promised himself he'd do whatever it took to make life better for them. But tonight? Tonight felt different. Jamal couldn't quite put his finger on it, but there was a strange weight in the air. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone on the street. Life wasn't always kind to people like him, but still, he kept his head up and pushed forward. After all, what else could he do? As Jamal rounded the corner by the old 7-Eleven, he saw a car pulled over on the side of the road. At first, he thought it was just another person stuck in a jam, but as he got closer, he noticed the flat tire. The car was sleek, a dark, polished black that looked almost out of place here. A high-end vehicle, probably a luxury sports car, and, from the looks of it, the driver was having trouble. Jamal's first instinct was to keep walking. Who was he to get involved in someone else's problems? But then, he hesitated. The driver was a man in his 50s or so, pacing around the car and looking at the tire with frustration. His face was partly obscured by a hood, but even in the dim light, Jamal recognized him. No way. It was Keanu Reeves. Jamal rubbed his eyes, trying to make sense of it. Was this a joke? A hallucination? But no, there was no mistaking the sharp jawline, the signature look. Keanu Reeves, one of Hollywood's biggest stars, was standing in front of a flat tire in a random corner of the city. Jamal's heart raced. He wasn't sure if he should walk away or if he should help. What if Keanu was just some guy trying to look like him? But then again, what if it was him? Hey, you okay? Jamal called out, trying to sound casual but internally freaking out. He was never one to fan out over celebrities, but this was a whole other level. Keanu looked up at him, surprise flickering across his face for a moment, but then it melted into a smile. Yeah, just my luck, Keanu said, chuckling lightly. Tire's flat, and I don't have the tools I need. Jamal nodded, glancing at the tire. It didn't look too complicated, but then again, this was a fancy car, probably different from what Jamal was used to fixing. I can help you out, Jamal said before he had the chance to second-guess himself. He wasn't the best at changing tires, but he could manage. He'd had to help his mom's old car more times than he cared to count. Keanu raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. You sure? I don't want to trouble you. I'm good, Jamal replied with more confidence than he felt. I can handle it. Just give me a second. As Jamal crouched down to inspect the tire, his heart was still racing. This is insane, he thought. I'm literally helping Keanu Reeves with a flat tire right now. But there was no time to dwell on the weirdness of the situation. The tire was stubborn, and it wasn't budging. Keanu leaned against the car, watching Jamal work. Don't worry, take your time, he said, offering Jamal a reassuring smile. It's not every day I get help from someone who knows what they're doing. Jamal didn't respond immediately. His mind was running a million miles an hour, half focused on the task and half on the fact that he was standing next to one of the biggest movie stars of the decade. Finally, after several attempts, Jamal managed to loosen the bolt enough to get the tire off. He wiped sweat from his brow, the rain still falling lightly, but he didn't care. The problem wasn't just the tire anymore. It was the fact that this random encounter was happening at all. You know, you're better at this than I expected, Keanu said, breaking the silence and sounding impressed. Jamal chuckled nervously. Yeah, well, growing up in the neighborhood, you kinda learn to fix things when they break. Keanu looked at him for a moment, studying him, his expression softening. I can tell. You've got a good head on your shoulders. Jamal didn't know what to say. Here he was, fixing a tire for a celebrity, and the words he wanted to say, about dreams, struggles, and ambition, suddenly felt like they didn't matter. But still, something inside him told him to speak up, to share a little of his story. Yeah, you kinda have to, you know? My mom, she taught me to never quit. Even when it's tough, you just keep pushing. Keanu nodded slowly. I admire that. You remind me of someone who knows what they want. What's your dream, Jamal? The question took Jamal by surprise. No one ever asked him that, not like that anyway. He stared down at the tire, thinking for a moment before answering. I want to make it out of here, he said quietly. I want to do something big, something that helps people, you know? Keanu smiled, his eyes lighting up with a kind of understanding. I get it. Well, maybe this flat tire is just the start of something bigger. Maybe I can help you out. Jamal blinked, unsure if he'd heard that right. What do you mean? Keanu didn't elaborate, but his eyes sparkled with a kind of quiet assurance that made Jamal feel something shift in the air between them. Let's get this tire fixed first, Keanu said, then we'll talk. As Jamal tightened the last bolt and set the car back down, a strange sense of anticipation filled him. What had he just gotten himself into? And more importantly, what was Keanu Reeves about to offer him? Jamal didn't know yet, but something told him that this wasn't just an ordinary night. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. Jamal couldn't stop thinking about the encounter with Keanu as he made his way home. The rain had let up, but the dampness still clung to his clothes, the chill creeping into his bones. His mind was buzzing, but not from the cold. It wasn't every day you helped a Hollywood legend with a flat tire, but Jamal wasn't one to get too caught up in that. He had bigger things to worry about. He lived in a neighborhood that was far from glamorous, a place where every day was a struggle. For Jamal, life had always been about survival. His mom, a hard-working woman who did whatever it took to make ends meet, had been his rock. She worked 2 jobs, often coming home late at night, exhausted but never complaining. Her strength was the foundation of Jamal's world. From a young age, he learned that nothing came easy, and he'd have to fight for what he wanted. Growing up in this neighborhood had shaped Jamal in ways that he didn't always fully understand. He'd seen friends get caught up in bad situations, either falling into the wrong crowd or being stuck in the cycle of poverty that seemed impossible to escape. It was a daily reminder that if you didn't take control of your future, life would take control of you. Jamal was determined to avoid that. He had seen his mom struggle, but she never gave up, and neither would he. He remembered the nights when they sat together at the kitchen table, trying to make the numbers work, her paycheck, the bills, and all the things they needed. There were times when he could see the worry in her eyes, the tiredness etched in her face. But she would always smile and tell him the same thing. Keep pushing, Jamal. Never stop. You're better than this. Those words had stayed with him through everything. They were his driving force. His mom had worked hard to give him and his little sister, Mia, everything they needed. Jamal couldn't help but feel like it was his responsibility to make sure they didn't stay stuck. He had dreams, big ones, that stretched far beyond the corner of his block. But the path to those dreams wasn't clear, and sometimes it felt like the world was doing everything it could to make sure he never reached them. Jamal often found himself working late nights to make a little extra money. He was always doing something, whether it was helping out at the local convenience store or doing odd jobs for neighbors. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept the lights on. And as much as Jamal hated the thought of being stuck in this cycle forever, he never let it show. He kept his head up, always moving forward. But even with all the work he put in, there was a constant pressure. The weight of his mom's sacrifices, the bills, the stress. It was all on his shoulders now. Jamal was too young to be the man of the house, but it didn't matter. He was, and he had to be, for his family. As he walked down the familiar, cracked sidewalk, Jamal couldn't help but feel the burden of his dreams tugging at him. He had big plans. He was going to get out of here, and he was going to make it. He just needed that one break, that one shot. But getting that shot felt impossible sometimes. He thought back to the conversation with Keanu. The way Keanu had looked at him with that understanding smile. It wasn't the first time someone had told him that he had something special, but hearing it from someone like him, someone who had seen success beyond his wildest imagination, felt different. It made Jamal wonder, could this be it? Could this be the break he needed? When Jamal was younger, he had dreams of becoming a professional basketball player. That dream, however, had faded after years of seeing his talent go unnoticed. His school didn't have the funding for a competitive team, and his dad wasn't around to push him in that direction. But Jamal didn't give up. He found other ways to hustle, to make money, to build something for himself. And while basketball was no longer his main focus, the drive to succeed had never left him. But he had other dreams now, dreams that were bigger, more tangible. Maybe he could do something in entertainment, something that let him help others the way Keanu had helped him tonight. He had the ambition. He had the heart. All he needed was the right opportunity. As Jamal reached his front door, he glanced up at the darkened windows of his home. Inside, his mom would be sitting at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee and preparing for another long day. Mia would be in bed, her soft snores filling the quiet house. Jamal had promised himself that he wouldn't let his family down. He had to find a way out. He had to make them proud. He opened the door quietly, stepping inside and tossing his wet jacket on the back of a chair. His mom was at the kitchen table, just as he had expected. She looked up from her paperwork, her tired eyes softening when she saw him. "How was your shift, Jamal?" she asked, her voice warm but weary. "Same as usual," he replied, trying to sound nonchalant, though his mind was racing. He wasn't sure if he could tell her about the weird encounter with Keanu. She might think he was dreaming, or worse, that he was just chasing fantasies. But his mom had always encouraged him to chase what felt right, even if the world seemed to stand in the way. "Anything exciting happen?" she pressed, raising an eyebrow, as if sensing that something was on his mind. Jamal hesitated. How could he explain it? That he had just helped Keanu Reeves, a guy he had only ever seen on screen, with a flat tire on the side of the road? "Actually, yeah," Jamal said, letting out a breath. He figured he'd tell her the truth, just the basics, anyway. "I helped someone out tonight. He might be able to help me with something." His mom's expression softened. "That's great, Jamal. You never know where opportunities might come from. Just keep working hard, and they'll find you." Jamal smiled at her, grateful for her support, but deep down, he knew he had to work harder than ever to make something of this. This might be the chance he'd been waiting for. He couldn't afford to let it slip through his fingers. "Keep pushing, Mom," he thought to himself, as he turned to his room to get some rest. Tomorrow would bring a new day, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something big. Do you have someone in your life who's always pushed you forward, even when it seemed impossible? Jamal asked aloud, a quiet reflection on his own journey. Maybe it's time we all take that leap of faith. What would you do if you had the chance to change everything? Leave a comment, and don't forget to hit subscribe. The adventure is just beginning. The next morning, Jamal woke up to the familiar buzz of his alarm clock, the sound filling the room like a constant reminder that time was never on his side. He groggily reached out to silence it, his mind still spinning from last night's encounter. Helping Keanu Reeves with that flat tire had felt surreal, like something out of a movie. But as the hours passed, reality began to set in. What exactly did Keanu mean by "maybe I can help you out"? Was he just being polite? Or did he really see something in Jamal that no one else did? Jamal had always been the kind of guy to keep his head down, work hard, and never expect anything from anyone. But last night, something about the way Keanu spoke made Jamal feel like there might be more to life than grinding away at odd jobs. He had a shot. He just had to figure out what to do with it. The day dragged on in typical fashion. Jamal went to work at the corner store, ringing up customers and stocking shelves. He kept thinking about Keanu's words, replaying the conversation over and over in his head, but no new details emerged. He wasn't sure what Keanu had meant when he said they'd talk later. He wasn't even sure if Keanu had actually meant to offer him something, or if he was just being nice. Jamal couldn't focus on anything at work. Every time a customer walked in, his mind drifted back to the one question that gnawed at him. What's next? As the day wore on, Jamal started to feel the weight of it all. He'd never been one to ask for help. People in his neighborhood didn't ask for help. You worked hard, and if you couldn't make it on your own, too bad. There were no handouts, no magic moments where everything turned around with a little bit of luck. But still, there was something in the way Keanu had looked at him, something about his genuine interest that made Jamal wonder if maybe, just maybe, things could be different for him. The shift finally ended, and Jamal trudged home, his feet dragging as he walked the familiar streets. He didn't want to admit it, but he was feeling more and more uncertain. He had his dreams, sure, but they felt miles away. He could barely keep up with the responsibilities at home, let alone chase some grand new opportunity. And yet, the idea of what could be lingered in his mind like an unshakable whisper. When Jamal got home, his mom was at the stove, the scent of her cooking filling the small house. Mia was sitting at the table, flipping through a school book, her homework spread out in front of her. Jamal smiled at the sight. No matter how hard things got, they had each other. His family was his anchor, the only thing that made the struggle worth it. "Hey, Jamal," Mia said as she looked up from her book. "Did something cool happen last night? You look like you've been thinking about something for a while." Jamal paused. He hadn't told his sister about the encounter with Keanu yet. It wasn't that he didn't want to. He just didn't know how to explain it. It felt too big, too unbelievable. "Just stuff," he said, brushing it off. Same old, same old." Mia raised an eyebrow but didn't push. She always seemed to sense when something was off, but she knew better than to ask too many questions. Jamal was her older brother, and he was always looking out for her. She trusted him, and he wasn't about to let her down. His mom, however, didn't let it slide so easily. She turned from the stove, her eyes narrowing in concern. "What's going on, Jamal? You seem distracted." Jamal shrugged, trying to shake off the feeling that was creeping over him. "It's nothing. Just a lot on my mind, I guess." She studied him for a moment, then nodded as if she understood. "I know it's tough, but you can't carry everything by yourself. We're a team, remember?" Jamal forced a smile. "Yeah, I know. I'm good, Mom." His mom gave him a skeptical look, but didn't press further. She turned back to the stove, clearly wanting to let him work through whatever was on his mind in his own time. Jamal sat down at the table next to Mia, staring at his phone without really seeing it. He was trying to stay focused on anything but the swirling uncertainty in his chest. Just then, a message flashed across his screen. "Keanu Reeves, I've got an idea. Meet me tomorrow morning at the cafe on 5th. Jamal's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment he'd been waiting for, the break he dreamed about for years. But as soon as the excitement hit, a new wave of anxiety rushed in. What if it's a mistake? What if Keanu was just being polite, and now Jamal was setting himself up for disappointment? He stared at the message for a long time, his finger hovering over the reply button. What was he supposed to say? How could he prepare for something that didn't even seem real? "Are you okay?" Mia asked quietly, sensing his unease. "You're acting weird. More weird than usual." Jamal chuckled, grateful for her concern. "I'm fine. Just thinking about something." Mia gave him a knowing look. "If you want to talk about it, you know I'm here." Jamal smiled at her, though his mind was racing. Maybe it was time he stopped pretending like everything was okay. Maybe, just maybe, this was his shot at something bigger. But that didn't make the uncertainty go away. He couldn't help but think back to everything his mom had told him. Keep pushing, Jamal. Never stop. You're better than this. But pushing for what? And what if the opportunities he'd been waiting for his whole life never came? Tomorrow, when he met Keanu at that cafe, Jamal would find out what this chance really meant. But for now, all he could do was hold on to the hope that things were finally starting to change. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when everything feels uncertain? Leave a comment and hit subscribe. Jamal's journey is just getting started. Stay tuned. The morning air was cool, the kind of crispness that promised a fresh start. Jamal woke up early, his nerves buzzing with anticipation. He had set his alarm an hour earlier than usual, just to make sure he had time to get ready and clear his head. But no amount of preparation could settle the whirlwind inside him. Today wasn't just another day. Today could change everything. After a quick shower, Jamal slipped on a simple t-shirt and jeans. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed, "I'm trying too hard." He wanted to be himself, not some version of himself he thought Keanu might expect. His sneakers hit the pavement with a steady rhythm as he walked toward the cafe on 5th. The place wasn't fancy, but it had a certain charm to it. A little local spot with the smell of fresh coffee and pastries always wafting out into the street. When he arrived, the cafe was just starting to come to life. People were trickling in, and the barista was already behind the counter, setting up for the morning rush. But Jamal wasn't focused on any of that. His eyes scanned the room, searching for the one person who could change his life. There, sitting in a corner booth, was Keanu Reeves. Keanu looked exactly like he did in the movies. His messy hair, his effortless cool demeanor, like a person who had mastered the art of being laid back. He wasn't dressed in a suit or anything overly flashy, just a simple jacket and jeans, blending in with everyone else. But there was something magnetic about him, something that made it clear he wasn't just another guy. Jamal felt his stomach tighten, a mix of excitement and doubt swirling in his gut. What had he gotten himself into? He didn't even know why Keanu had asked to meet him. Maybe he was just being polite, maybe he was bored, or maybe he actually saw something in Jamal. He couldn't tell. Taking a deep breath, Jamal walked over to the table and, with a hesitant smile, said, "Hey, Keanu." Keanu looked up from his coffee and smiled warmly. "Hey man, good to see you. Have a seat." Jamal slid into the booth across from him, trying to keep his cool but feeling a little out of his element. This was the kind of thing you saw in movies, not something that happened to people like him. "So, what's going on?" Jamal asked, still unsure of how to approach the conversation. Keanu leaned back in his seat, his eyes thoughtful. "Well, Jamal, after last night, I've been thinking. You helped me out, and I could see that you've got something more than just street smarts. There's a drive in you, a real desire to make something of yourself. And I respect that." Jamal blinked, not sure if he was hearing things correctly. You really think that?" Keanu nodded. "Absolutely. But here's the thing. You don't get opportunities like this just by showing up. You've got to be ready for them. You've got to be willing to take a leap, even when you don't know where it'll land." Jamal felt a knot form in his stomach. What leap? What was Keanu talking about? "What are you saying?" Jamal asked cautiously. "I'm saying that I think you've got potential, Jamal, and I want to give you a shot. Not just some charity handout, but a real chance to do something you're passionate about. Whether it's getting into the entertainment industry or something else, I want to help you find the path that's right for you." Jamal's mind spun as the words sunk in. Help him find his path? Was this real? Was he dreaming? "I know that's a lot to take in," Keanu continued, sensing Jamal's hesitation. "But I see you. And I know how hard it is to break out of where you're from. I didn't get here because of luck. I worked for it. I want to give you a taste of that, to show you that your circumstances don't define you." Jamal opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. He'd always thought that people like Keanu lived in a world far removed from his own. Celebrities didn't care about people like him. They didn't give second chances to kids from neighborhoods like his. But here was Keanu, offering him something he never thought possible. Jamal's head was reeling. He had dreams, big ones, but even his dreams seemed too far-fetched. Who was he, a kid from a small town with no connections, to be given this kind of opportunity? The fear of failure hit him hard, but there was also something else, hope. Hope that maybe this was his shot. Keanu leaned forward, his voice more serious now. "You've got one chance to make something of this. I'm not going to promise you an easy ride, but I can promise you this. If you're willing to work for it, I'll help you get to where you need to be. But you've got to make that decision for yourself." Jamal sat back, his mind racing. He had spent so much of his life just trying to survive. Now, someone who had lived a life Jamal could barely imagine was offering him a chance to change everything. Keanu wasn't asking for anything in return. Not yet, anyway. He wasn't offering some kind of quick fix, but a real shot at something bigger. And suddenly, Jamal was filled with a fierce determination. This was his chance, his moment. If he didn't take it, what would he have? "I'm in," Jamal said, his voice steady but full of the raw emotion he felt. "I'll do whatever it takes." Keanu's eyes lit up with approval. "Good. I knew you'd say that. The first step is simple. Believe in yourself. It all starts there." Jamal felt a weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time in a long while, he could see a path ahead of him. One that didn't involve just scraping by, but actually achieving something. This was it. His journey had begun. As they talked further, Keanu gave him some advice, some direction, and an introduction to people who could help him. Jamal knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right track. The future was wide open. And with that, the journey of a lifetime had begun. What would you do if you had the chance to change everything? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to hit subscribe. This journey is just getting started. The days following the meeting with Keanu were a whirlwind. Jamal's life had changed in ways he hadn't even begun to understand. What started as a simple act of kindness, helping a stranger with a flat tire, had blossomed into an opportunity he could never have imagined. Keanu wasn't just offering words of encouragement, he was giving Jamal the tools to change his life. But as the days went by, that excitement was met with a growing sense of doubt. At first, everything seemed perfect. Keanu had introduced him to a few people in the entertainment world, people who could help him break into the industry. He was invited to events, given advice on how to navigate the rough waters of showbiz. Jamal couldn't believe the doors that were opening to him. It was like something out of a movie, except it was happening to him. But the reality of it all soon began to settle in. Every time Jamal stood in front of someone who could help him, every time he spoke to an influential person, he felt a lump form in his throat. The fear of failure crept in at the edges of his mind, telling him he didn't belong. These people had everything: money, connections, experience. What did he have? A high school diploma, a few odd jobs under his belt, and a whole lot of dreams. It wasn't long before Jamal started second-guessing himself. He felt like an imposter, like someone who didn't deserve to be in the same room as the people he was meeting. He began to feel like he was on the verge of losing it all. The fear was consuming him. What if he let Keanu down? What if he was wasting the opportunity of a lifetime? One evening, Jamal found himself alone in his small apartment, staring at his phone. He'd received another message from Keanu, telling him to meet up again soon. Jamal's heart pounded as he read the message over and over. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. What could he possibly say to someone who had given him so much? He had been working on a small project, a script he'd written in his spare time, an idea that had been floating around in his head for years. But now that he had the chance to actually make it happen, he wasn't sure if it was good enough. It was a risky move to show it to anyone, especially Keanu. What if it was terrible? What if he wasn't cut out for this world? As Jamal sat there in the dim light, a storm of emotions swirling inside him, he felt an overwhelming urge to quit, to walk away before anyone else could see how much of a failure he might be. He couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't good enough, that all of this was too much for him. But then his phone buzzed again, pulling him out of his spiral. This time, it was a text from his mom. "Hey Jamal, I know you're going through a lot right now. Just wanted to remind you that no matter what, we're proud of you. We've always believed in you. You've got this. Don't forget that." Jamal stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. His mom was right. She'd always believed in him, even when he hadn't believed in himself. She and Mia, they were his foundation. They were the reason he kept going, even when everything seemed impossible. The thought of letting them down was too much to bear. He couldn't quit now, not when he had come this far. He owed it to them, to himself, to keep going. Taking a deep breath, Jamal stood up and grabbed his phone. He began typing a response to Keanu, his fingers trembling slightly as he wrote, "Hey, Keanu, I've been thinking a lot about everything. I'm ready to show you what I've been working on. I think I've got something you'll like." He hit send before he could overthink it. The waiting game began again. Time seemed to crawl as Jamal tried to keep his mind occupied with other things, but he couldn't shake the anxiety gnawing at him. Was this the right decision? Was he making a fool of himself? Then, his phone buzzed again. Keanu's message appeared on the screen. "I'm looking forward to seeing it. Meet me at the cafe tomorrow. I want to talk about your next steps. You've got more potential than you think, Jamal. Don't doubt yourself." Jamal let out a shaky breath. It was happening. The next day, he went to the cafe feeling more nervous than he had ever been in his life. His palms were sweaty. His heart raced with anticipation. This was his moment. This was the test. Would Keanu see his potential? Or was he just another person in a long line of people who tried and failed? When he arrived, Keanu was already sitting at the same booth as before. He looked up and smiled as Jamal approached, his calm demeanor putting Jamal at ease, if only for a moment. Jamal sat down across from him and took a deep breath. "I've got something to show you," he said, pulling out his phone and tapping through to the script he had written. Keanu leaned in, his eyes scanning the screen. As Jamal watched, he felt a rush of vulnerability flood over him. He had no idea how Keanu would react. After a few minutes, Keanu put the phone down. He looked at Jamal, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Jamal's heart stopped. This was it. The verdict. "I'll be honest," Keanu said, his voice low but kind. "This isn't perfect, but it's got heart. I can see the passion in it. And that's the most important thing." Jamal exhaled, relieved but still unsure. "You think it's worth pursuing?" Keanu nodded. "Absolutely. But remember, this is just the beginning. You've got a long road ahead, and it's not going to be easy. But you've got the drive. Don't forget that." In that moment, Jamal felt something shift inside him. All the doubt, all the fear, all the uncertainty. It didn't disappear, but it didn't control him anymore. He wasn't going to let it. "Thanks, Keanu," Jamal said, his voice steady. "I won't let you down." Keanu smiled, the warmth in his eyes matching the confidence he had in Jamal. "I know you won't." As Jamal left the cafe, he walked with his head held higher than he had in a long time. The road ahead might be long and filled with obstacles, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to take that next step. What would you do if you knew you had what it takes to succeed? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Jamal's journey is far from over. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Jamal had thrown himself into the work, working on his script, meeting with people who could help him, and slowly, but surely, building the future he had always dreamed of. Each day was a mix of learning, frustration, and small victories. Every time he hit a roadblock, there was something or someone pushing him to keep going. Keanu's words still echoed in his mind. "You've got the drive. Don't forget that." It wasn't always easy. Some days, Jamal felt completely out of his depth. At times, the pressure to succeed felt overwhelming. There were nights when he stayed up late, staring at his computer screen, second-guessing every word he'd written, wondering if he was really cut out for this. But each morning, when the sun rose, so did his resolve to try again. Through it all, Jamal had one constant: his family. His mom was his anchor, always there with words of encouragement and wisdom. And Mia, his little sister, was a reminder of why he couldn't afford to give up. He had to make this work for them. One night, after a particularly grueling session of editing his script, Jamal decided to take a break and visit his mom. He had missed the comfort of home, the sense of familiarity that grounded him. His mom was sitting at the kitchen table when he arrived, sipping her usual cup of tea. She looked up with a warm smile, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Hey, baby, how's everything going?" she asked, her voice calm and soothing. Jamal smiled, sitting down across from her. "It's going good. Really good, actually. I've made some progress with the script. Keanu's been helping me a lot." His mom raised an eyebrow, but the pride in her expression was unmistakable. "Keanu? The Keanu?" "Yeah," Jamal chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "The one and only. He's been giving me advice, introducing me to people who can help with the project." "It's crazy, Ma. I can't even imagine," his mom said softly. "But I know you've always had big dreams, and you've never backed down from a challenge. Just remember, no matter what happens, you've already come so far." Jamal nodded, feeling the weight of her words. She had always been his biggest supporter, even when things seemed impossible. She believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. And now, here he was, taking steps toward something bigger than he could have ever imagined. "I know, Ma. I just don't want to let anyone down. Not you, not Mia, and especially not Keanu." "You won't let anyone down," his mom said gently. "You're doing the work. You're putting in the effort. That's what matters most. And if things don't turn out exactly how you want, well, that's okay, too. You've already proven that you've got the heart for it. And that's something no one can take away." Jamal smiled, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't had in a while. His mom was right. Success wasn't just about reaching the destination. It was about the journey, the lessons learned, and the people who supported you along the way. He had already come so far. It wasn't just about making a name for himself. It was about showing the world that anyone could rise above their circumstances if they kept pushing forward. Later that week, Jamal received a call that would change everything. It was from Keanu. "Hey, Jamal. How's it going? I wanted to talk to you about something important." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. "Yeah, I'm good. What's up?" Keanu's voice was steady but full of anticipation. "I've been talking to a few people, and I think we're ready to take the next step with your script. It's time to get it in front of some producers. We're gonna make this happen, Jamal." Jamal's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced. Was this real? Wait, you're serious? You think it's ready? "Absolutely," Keanu said. "You've put in the work, and it's time to show the world what you've got. We've got some people who are interested. It's happening." Jamal sat back in his chair, trying to process everything. This was the moment he had been working for, the one he dreamed of since he was a kid. And now it was real. "Thank you, Keanu. I don't know what to say." Keanu laughed, his voice warm and encouraging. "You don't have to say anything, Jamal. Just keep doing what you've been doing. You're ready for this." As Jamal hung up the phone, a wave of emotions washed over him. Excitement, fear, disbelief. But at the core of it all was gratitude. For Keanu, for his mom, for Mia, and for himself. He had made it this far, and he wasn't going to stop now. The next few months were a blur of meetings, revisions, and sleepless nights. But every step, no matter how small, brought him closer to his dream. The producers Keanu had connected him with loved the script, and soon, Jamal found himself in rooms with people who could make his vision a reality. It wasn't always easy. There were plenty of setbacks, moments of doubt, and days when Jamal wanted to quit. But each time, he thought about his mom's words, "You've already come so far." And he did. He kept going. Eventually, the hard work paid off. The project was greenlit. Jamal's script would become a reality, a film that would be seen by people across the world. The sense of accomplishment was overwhelming. It wasn't just about the fame or the recognition. It was about proving to himself that he could do it. As the premiere day approached, Jamal stood backstage, waiting for his moment. He looked out at the crowd, seeing the familiar faces of his family, his friends, and even Keanu, who had been there every step of the way. Jamal knew that his journey was just beginning. There would be more obstacles ahead, more challenges to face. But for the first time in his life, he knew that he had the strength to overcome them. And as the lights dimmed and the film began, Jamal smiled to himself. He had done it. What's one thing you've always dreamed of doing but haven't yet? Leave a comment below and don't forget to hit subscribe. Jamal's journey continues, and the best is yet to come.